Do you have any idea what this year has done to me? Do you understand the sacrifices I made, all for your entertainment? Did you experience horrors untold as I did? I think not. Because every year, I delve where others seldom glance. I'm the one who looks under the bed for the monsters below. One could say, I'm an unsung hero, or a rebel without a cause. What I'm trying to say is I played a lot of shitty video games this year. I've seen asset flips, condom nipples, malware, scams, missing EXE files, DMCAs, Fallout 76. Basically all the bullshit the industry had to offer in 2018. And what a year it was! We laughed, we cried. I had more than a few mental breakdowns at the horrid shite I was playing. It all added up to the best year the channel has ever seen. So thanks to all of you who supported the channel throughout the year. What better way to give back than to look at the absolute biggest piles of excrement that seeped their way onto the storefront this year. So a few quick rules before we get started. This list only includes games that I personally played throughout the year. There is a limit of 1 game per developer, because it would be a pretty repetitive list if there wasn't. Some of these entries are made by larger studios or are objectively more like a functioning video game than others. I don't care. They're still the worst game ever. Deal with it. So fuck it. We're diving right into the shit pile because these are the top 10 worst games ever of 2018. Wait, what the hell's going on? No. No. No, 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 no. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. It looks like there's another game that deserves to be on this list. But I've already made my top 10 list, so what am I supposed to do? Screw it! I guess we'll just add another game to the list then. This is now a top 11 list, because fuck Atlas.
Die, you fuckers.
Atlas is a scam. There are no two ways about it. The developers of Ark decided they would turn a pirate-themed ocean DLC for the game into a full product without telling anyone about it and having people only realize it after the game launched. Loaded with the same assets, mechanics, even the same goddamn menu as Ark, Atlas is an atrocious waste of time that you need to stay far away from. There isn't another game on this list that has less representative trailers than Atlas. The entire gameplay loop was deliberately hidden by the developers until release so they could sell as many pre-release copies and day one sales as possible. When players finally got their hands on the game, it was nothing like anything presented in the marketing material. What was advertised as a pirate-themed adventure game is quite literally a reskinned version of Ark that, believe it or not, runs worse. The gameplay, spawn system, and AI are an absolute joke, even by early access standards. When I started the game, I literally couldn't swim to shore on spawn without being eaten by alligators. Whatever though, the alligators, or crocodiles, whatever they are, didn't always kill me, because sometimes they were flying in the air, or just couldn't hit me at all, and would swim around in circles. When I finally got to the island, I ran into a group of a dozen or so players on a rock, and none of us could venture into the island without immediately dying, and that made resource gathering a futile effort. On top of that, the game runs incredibly poorly, sub 30 FPS constantly, and stuttering with disconnects everywhere. I have yet to even see a fully constructed ship because it takes so long to create even a small raft in the game. You'd think a game that marketed being a pirate so heavily would let you know, be a pirate. Instead, you're running around picking up rocks, sticks, and literal shit in a god-awful survival simulator. Fuck Atlas, it's a complete scam.
Die, you fuckers.
How Xaviant went from being one of the first Battle Royale success stories on Steam with the Culling to releasing a surprise sequel that couldn't even stay popular enough for a full server by day 2 is baffling. I played the Culling during its first incarnation, and the game was a decent affair. It had personality and effort put into making the game have a unique aesthetic that complemented some decent gameplay to keep people coming back. Then the developer fundamentally changed the flow of the game when nobody asked for it, resulting in simplified and in many cases broken combat that drove away the player base. After a few more updates, the game was dead from both the developer and the player end. Fast forward to July 2018, and Xavier Games surprised everybody with a sequel in The Culling 2. The surprise release was nothing though compared to the surprise players would get upon actually experiencing the game. The Culling 2 was a shell of the original product, desperately trying to capture the same limelight as Fortnite and PUBG. In doing so, it stripped away all the original game's content and personality in favor of making another drab battle royale that felt more at home on mobile devices than a full Steam release. The game was buggy, unfinished, and offered nothing that could bring players from the other popular games in the genre. I played the game roughly 3 days after release, and the servers were already down to under 10 players per game. That is when the servers worked at all. The Culling 2 was met with extreme negative backlash from fans of the original game and anyone else unlucky enough to take a swig of this generic backwash. The negative reaction was so great that Xavier Games decided to pull the game from sale entirely and start working on the first game again, promising to roll back various updates to reintroduce the version of the game that was present during its initial popularity. I can't stress enough just how buggy, bland, and awful playing the Culling 2 really was. Even Radical Heights was able to keep a player base longer, and that game forced Cliffy B to fly back to the sun to recharge his superpowers for a few years.
Die, you fuckers!
Yeah, I'm breaking my own rules by including more than one game as an entry on this one. Or am I? It was a long-running gag between myself and Sentinels of the Store that one day 2 different developers would release the same asset flip at the same time, resulting in a game releasing twice in one day on Steam. Well, ask and you shall receive, because that's exactly what happened with Race and Raceland. Despite the most minor of UI changes, these games were both uploads of racing game template from the Unity store. The same customization options, tracks, and cars were present in both. Race and Raceland represent the utter laziness of both Valve and asset flippers as a whole on Steam. If Valve had taken the most basic amount of quality control, or even looked at the release list once a day, they would have seen that 2 different asshats were uploading the same product within hours of each other. I'm not even sure I want to talk about the games themselves. They looked terrible, the cars controlled like a buttered turkey, and it was actually harder to turn corners if you weren't holding down the accelerator button. What a frickin' great racing game. The AI would also constantly get stuck in pile-ups and not be able to continue the race, showing that the cars in the asset pack were meant to be a starting point for someone to build from, not to be re-uploaded as a full product. Fuck off with this shit, and Valve, get somebody to at least look at your storefront. I'm available. You can pay me in trading cards.
Die, you fuckers!
Sea of Thieves is a sandbox that they forgot to put sand into, so instead all the kids are sitting on concrete, bashing their plastic shovels against it in a futile attempt to have fun. Never before have I paid full price for a game and felt so utterly scammed. At least with games like Aliens Colonial Marines, the game was completely broken. Sea of Thieves works, it just doesn't do anything. The game could almost serve better as a damn screensaver than an interactive product. The content provided in the game is the most bare-bones experience that one could think of. The gameplay loop is taking a quest from an NPC to dig up a chest, sailing to the island, maybe fighting one of the 3 enemies in the game, digging up that chest and taking it back to the NPC for money. After doing that more than 3 times, I could hardly stand to keep going in the game. Sea of Thieves expects other players to make the rest of the game exciting, since anyone can steal treasure chests from other crews. But that's all you can do. If you see another ship on the horizon, you're either running away from it or chasing after it. There's no other reason to interact with players from outside your group than combat. And that'd be fine if the combat was enjoyable. Instead, everybody has the same weapons from the start, and all unlockables are cosmetic, so there's no sense of progression throughout the game. Just imagine all the interesting contraptions and weapons that could have been included in a pirate game. Nope, you get 3 guns, some cannons, and barrels of TNT. Wait, what the fuck? That's really it? The entire game felt like an alpha or a tech demo. Visually, it looks fantastic. It might have some of the best sailing and wave mechanics ever made for a video game. It's a shame that once you sail to your destination, you remember everything is a digital cardboard cutout simply made to resemble a game. And the worst part of all this is that Rare was at one point one of the best developers working in the industry, and it's incredibly sad to see how far they've fallen. No longer do we get Banjo-Kazooie, GoldenEye 007, or the best game of all time, Viva Pinata! Now they've been relegated to Microsoft's slave, developing creatively bankrupt money siphons.
Die, you fuckers!
I decided to make a single listing for all the re-uploads we saw this year of UNITZ Battlegrounds. Available on the Unity store, UNITZ Battlegrounds is a battle royale template based on the other insanely popular asset flip target, UNITZ Survival. It's a voxel art style, ready-to-go Battlegrounds game that the average asset flipper just needs to stick some memes into the main menu before shoving it onto Steam with a barely legible title. I personally played this game 4 times from 4 different developers this year, but throughout checking the Steam releases list regularly, I saw it released under a different name at least a dozen times. Some of them were removed from Steam, but others are still festering on the store to this day. One of the most disturbing parts of this game being re-uploaded was that many of the asset flippers would focus on naming and presenting the game in a very homophobic nature. UNITZ Battlegrounds popped up on Steam this year under names like Gay Battlegrounds, LGBT versus Russia Battlegrounds, LGBT Battlegrounds, and plenty of other ill-thought-out names with common themes of killing gay people. The majority of these games seem to come from Russia, and from what we know, Russia's feelings towards LGBT people is pretty far behind the rest of the world. It's resulted in the entire concept becoming a giant meme over there, which is just messed up. Even if some of it's also a jab at the Russian government and their stances on the subject. Basically what I'm saying is if you're gonna make a political statement or a joke game, the least you could do is put some effort into it instead of paying $100 to make a shit post. It's just like super grody.
Die, you fuckers!
Holy shit, where to begin with this one? Bethesda may be the most incompetent developer of 2018 now that the trash heap that is Fallout 76 has graced us with its post-apocalyptic stench. You've likely heard every single criticism about Fallout 76 already. The AI in the game is some of the worst I've personally ever seen. This is including the dozens of asset flips I've played. The main enemy in the game was unable to even hold its gun correctly and would constantly twist or contort into terrifying shapes. When they were doing that, they'd be sliding along the ground or falling through the floor when you killed them. Sometimes they'd just stop attacking you altogether, instead focused on their arms becoming spaghetti. Bugs were so prevalent in Fallout 76, I couldn't go a full 10 minutes without running into something so baffling and hilarious, I couldn't help but record it. I recently went back to playing Fallout 4 and put like an extra 50 hours into that game. During that time, I ran into roughly 3 major glitches on the level of the bullshit that permeates in Fallout 76. If that wasn't enough, the entire game lacks any cohesive goal or real reason for it to be multiplayer in the first place. It's fucking boring is what I'm saying. While I had fun playing with friends at points, overall we were just thinking we'd rather be playing Fallout 4 in co-op instead of an online-only snorefest. Despite PvP being heavily advertised, the game offers more negatives than positives if you initiate in it. Putting a bounty on your head and only rewarding you with a few caps on a kill, often respawning the opponent meters away from you. Building was limited from Fallout 4 to small campsite areas that couldn't be placed anywhere near a marked location on the map, which would be, you know, interesting and fun to build on. You could also store a pitiful amount of resources and loot at your camp, which at launch would periodically eradicate itself after not logging in for a while. And that's to say nothing of the technical and stability issues. There were problems logging in, loading, crashing, and Sid Alpha logging out of the game but his character staying in my house in his underwear. Then there's the nylon bags, Bethesda's cavalcade of fuck-ups that doesn't even seem humanly possible. They advertised a canvas bag in their collector's edition, only to send out a shitty, wrinkled nylon version to customers instead, while still advertising the canvas version until being repeatedly called out on it. Their solution was to initially say screw you to everyone before finally offering a generous 500 Bethesda bucks so that customers could buy a hat in the game or something. Ironically, it wasn't enough to buy the outfit in the game that included a goddamn canvas bag. Then they finally decided to offer replacements for customers, but Bethesda must have the Fallout 76 developers working on the support website as well, because they couldn't even do that right. Customers who submitted a ticket for refunds or replacements had their personal information displayed on the site for others to see before Bethesda thankfully fixed it. In case you can't tell, I really dislike Fallout 76. It's a corporately conceived circus of dicks using bad decisions out their tiny little flaps. I like Bethesda too, just not their dick lips.
Die, you fuckers!
ES Games is something I still don't fully understand to this day. From what I can tell, the game was conceived as a free-to-play launcher that came with one game while the others were to be offered as free DLC that you could download and add to said launcher. Does that sound stupid and needlessly complicated? It is. That's because the developer of the game figured out that they could pay $100 to put their launcher onto Steam, then because you don't have to pay to put DLC onto the platform, they could put the rest of their games on for free, all under one listing. It's actually quite the ingenious abuse of the storefront. Too bad that genius didn't translate over to the developer's games, ranging from incredibly basic to completely incomprehensible. ES Games was ugly, boring, barely worked, and made no freaking sense. Like, for real, what the hell's even going on right now? After I covered the game, the developer would make multiple rant posts on their Steam page before deleting them, sometimes minutes after posting. Eventually, they would exclaim multiple times that they were quitting development. And then after that, the posts gradually started devolving into religious propaganda of all things. These posts continued until December, when the developer was removed from Steam by Valve in their end-of-the-year culling. And I don't think anyone's gonna miss ES Games. Whatever the hell it was.
Die, you fuckers!
Ah, bunch of dudes. I miss you guys so much. The quintessential asset flip game guru garbage developer was kicked off of Steam earlier this year when Steam announced they would be removing games that were actively trolling. It took a couple weeks, but Valve actually made a bit of progress by getting rid of games like Active Shooter and the entire library of bunch of dudes. Asset Flip Simulator was the last game I played before they were jettisoned out the airlock, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a flat game guru map with no interactions or gameplay to speak of. Sometimes you would spawn and the game would think you were underwater for some reason, then you die instantaneously. In fact, the upload of the game seems to be corrupt. I accidentally found that out when I made my own gaming game guru as a joke, but exported it incorrectly, resulting in the file making the exact same map as the one in Asset Flip Simulator. That's right, I accidentally made the same game as this shit developer. Buncho Dudes was the definition of a lazy troll developer. They would steal entire tutorial projects from Game Guru and upload them under a different name, change the prices for their excrement to ludicrous degrees, and generally act like a small child whenever called out on it. Oh yeah, they also won the award for Worst Game Ever of 2017 for their other title, Glitch Simulator 2018. So good job, my dudes. You weren't the worst this year.
Die, you fuckers!
This game can't be fucking tolerated. Initially arriving on Steam without an exe file to launch up the game, Shadow Treachery Cannot Be Tolerated is the most objectively shit game on this list because it didn't work. The game would load you into a gunfight instantly, where you had between 1 to 5 seconds, depending on how lucky you were, to rapidly spam the fire button and see if you could kill the enemies. The only problems were that the enemies killed you in literal seconds, you couldn't move, the controls were inverted, and where you aimed isn't where the bullets would go. video. I tried for 20 minutes to actually do something in the game, but to no avail. It was utterly broken, and the developer couldn't give less of a shit. Somebody did manage to get past that part of the game, only to be greeted by a short cutscene, which then proclaimed the game would be continued in part 2. Oh please, Lord, God no. Please help, I think I'm having an aneurysm.
Die, you fuckers!
I have never played a more pretentious game than The Quiet Man. Originally announced by Square Enix, the entire project went quiet, haha, until suddenly releasing on Steam with no marketing whatsoever. And the reason for that became so evidently clear. The Quiet Man is the Room of video games. It thinks it can be deep, meaningful, and competent, but the actual product is so far from that, you can't help but keep playing to the end just to see how far a hole the developers dig themselves into. Part FMV, part Unreal Engine brawler, The Quiet Man is completely incomprehensible in both story and gameplay. The entire game is played with no audio or subtitles to let you know what the fuck is going on. Your character's deaf, so apparently he can't understand anything that's going on, and nobody he interacts with makes any effort to explain things to him or the player. Even when the character reads things, the game will deliberately hide them from the player so they don't know what's happening. The result is hours of boredom watching characters talk without hearing their voices or having any way of knowing what's happening. The worst part is that was the intention of the developer, because they have the audacity to ask you to play the entire game again afterwards because then they add in the dialogue. You fucking what, mate? You made me sit through hours of filmed dialogue with no sound or subtitles just so I could sit through it for hours again and actually hear the fucking game? It takes a special kind of out of touch to not understand how bad of an idea that is. What's worse is that not only are the cutscenes literally impossible to understand, so is the combat. The game has no written options in the menu or tutorial, so you basically have to guess what all the symbols mean in order to do anything. Because I guess deaf people can't read according to these guys? I beat the entire game not knowing how the combat works. I've never done that before. Most of the time you can just punch people until they fall over, that is until they don't, and then they start blocking, at which point you can use a finisher move that doesn't tell you when it's ready. That works on the blocking enemies until it doesn't, then it magically starts working again, and you have no idea why. What the fuck, Squeenix?
Die, you fuckers!
Super Seducer 2 is the worst game ever.
BATTleGrounds?
Because it's not a video game. It's a desperate D-list celebrity's attempt to gain relevance through negative reaction and get back at people who dared to call him out on his cringy bullshit. Super Seducer is a franchise that started early 2018 with its first entry. It's an FMV that claims to teach people how to pick up women alongside having a comedic absurdist tone.
Look guys, look, it's a mangina! Oh my god, it's a mangina! Everybody, it's a fucking mangina!
That sounds fine to an extent. Anything related to pickup artists sets off some alarm bells, but it could be harmless enough. It's really too bad the creator Richard LaRuina is an unstable child that can't process any sort of criticism without throwing a tantrum. Because of this, I've had to deal with his bullshit for months out of the year. He's harassed, bullied, and taken advantage of legal systems in order to harm my channel because I said mean things about his shitty video game. For those that don't know, after I covered Super Seducer when it released last year, Richard took offense to me stating that it was the worst game ever. He left derogatory comments on my video and started beaking at me on Twitter. Little odd considering my video had less than 500 views at the time. Now I consider myself a pretty prideful person, and I don't let people treat me like that. Especially when they can't handle me calling their game the worst game ever, despite them providing the review copy to my channel in the first place. You know, the YouTube channel that has a series where they call games they don't like the worst game ever. Not really sure what you were expecting. I warned other developers about Richard's reactions to coverage of his content, and he didn't like that at all. A day or so later, I was at work and started receiving several DMs from Richard over my Twitter. Close those DMs, kids, it only leads to bad things. Richard exclaimed that I had claimed he wouldn't DMCA my video because he was a pussy. It's worth pointing out, at no point did I ever call him a pussy, and in reality gave him multiple case studies in why a false DMCA is a bad fucking idea. So because I apparently called him a pussy, he DMCA'd my video. Oh, it's okay, Richard just wanted to do it to prove he wasn't afraid to do it, so he tried to immediately reinstate the video afterwards. Yeah, it doesn't work like that, bud. A DMCA is the start of a legal process on YouTube. When the site receives a report, their policy is to automatically remove the video until the issue is resolved. When you sign your name under a DMCA notice, you are claiming that your report is under legal jurisdiction and that anything otherwise is an act of perjury. Taking down somebody's video because you want to prove that your testicles aren't dried up mushrooms is definitely not a legal reason to use the DMCA system. Who the hell would have thought? A few hours later, I received an email from the poor sod that was Richard's PR department apologizing for the DMCA and offering me compensation in return. That was awfully nice of them.
You fucking marketing team.
They claimed that a member of the team was responsible for it, which directly contradicts the barely legible messages I received from Richard hours earlier. The next day, after I made a stink about it online, Richard sent me $50 to my PayPal account to pay for damages. I returned that. After posting my own video detailing the situation, the story picked up steam and ended up being covered from a variety of sources. Richard would be quoted in multiple articles proclaiming that I had goaded him into it, or that I'd asked for it. What the fuck? Yeah, I totally goaded Richard LaRuina into abusing a legal system with the mean things I said on Twitter like, don't DMCA my video. The video was reinstated a few days later and received thousands more views than it otherwise would have. Oh, and Richard claimed that he was the hero because of that, stating he helped my channel, so I should be thankful. No, for realsies, that's a thing. Fuck that. Richard didn't help my channel. Everybody that covered the story about his bullshit helped my channel. Oh, Jesus Christ, we haven't even talked about the game yet. Okay, let's do this again. Super Seducer 2 is the worst game ever. Super Seducer 2 is the worst game ever. No, that's not right. Super Seducer 2 is the worst game ever. Perfect. Super Seducer 2 released later in 2018 with a larger budget, more content, and a documentary detailing its creation. Oh, it also took shots at various YouTubers that didn't like the first game, including the guy that LaRuina DMCA'd, yours truly.
There is a YouTube convention, my friend, and now is your chance.
Ooh, who's there exactly?
The vice journalists,
Great.
BATTLEGROUNDS,
Awesome, perfect.
Boogie,
He's quite likable.
Tim Sterling,
Fucking prick.
Alfarad, friend without benefits.
I like those guys too.
There is also the Mini Mint.
Nah, he didn't answer my email, so whatever. Anyone else?
Bro Jared,
Let's fucking do this. Die, you fuckers.
Mangina!
Truth be told, I found this more funny than anything, that he put so much time and effort into getting back at these people to appease his own ego. As I played through the game though, it became apparent that Richard was using it as a juvenile reaction to those that didn't support his first entry. You know, instead of putting effort into catering towards the ones that did, however few that was. Throughout the game, he takes shots at various content creators of all sizes. He even steals sound bites from their videos and includes footage without permission so he can respond to it in ways that either take it out of context or don't make any damn sense.
And instead of spending your money on a game like this, hey, why don't you walk up to a pretty girl in the mall and say, hey, you know, I don't know, you know, I don't know, just keep it cool, guys.
What are you doing?
That's kind of fucked up to put into a game you're selling, eh? Whoops, went a bit Canadian for a sec there. When not taking shots at internet denizens, the game attempts to show people how to pick up women. Oh sorry, it shows you how to pick up men. Wait, no, it's a comedy game that shouldn't be taken seriously. No, but it claims to have actual advice. Which one is it? You can't have your cake and eat it too. Otherwise it becomes super awkward. The game constantly shifts from absurd humor to serious segments, which makes the entire thing uncomfortable to view. Look at this scene, for example. I think it's supposed to be playing for comedy, but it's over a minute of Richard staring at a girl's ass like a creeper.
Do you think you can do it?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Just get in there and... You got them?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, actually, they're not that important. Just put them somewhere in your desk.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Besides the punchline apparently being sexual assault, it drags on so long it literally makes me want to look away from the screen from how embarrassing the scene is. And the entire game is like that, trust me. I played it for 6 hours. Also raised $500 for charity, so that was nice. Whenever Richard is the one on screen acting, it's like watching a 10-year-old in a high school play. He has no comedic timing or acting ability, so your brain just wants to leap out of your skull to escape all the cringe. The script doesn't help anything either, filled with contradictions and improv that simply doesn't lead anywhere. It's honestly incredibly hard to sit through because so many scenes just drag on with no point. I will completely admit that it's a little better though in scenes where Richard isn't there because they hire people with real talent and charisma. This scene in particular is comedy gold, not because of the script but the delivery of the actors.
Forget all this reading and writing bullshit. You like horses?
Sure.
Have you ever had sex on a horse?
What?
Or with a horse? Oh, only on Wednesdays.
Actually, anything with this guy Mahmoud in it is gold. Can we get a t-shirt with this guy's face, please? For every Mahmoud, though, there's another actor Richarding it up, especially this guy, who I guess is supposed to be a comedian in real life? Jesus, dude. Some of the scenes as well are just beyond saving no matter what you do. There's this scene that takes an entire interlude to create a swatting segment. You know, that thing that people have literally been injured or died from. And it was also to make a joke at that journalist that couldn't play Cuphead well. Yeah, everybody remembers that. It's so tasteful. Super Seducer 2 is at least mildly better in the technical department from the first, but that's likely just due to the budget increase so they could get better cameras and microphones. The execution of everything technical is just as bad as the first game. Shots drag on too long, they're framed poorly, and the audio still sounds like it's inside a tuna can randomly because they don't set up their microphones correctly.
Where are all the real men in here?
I'm also willing to bet that the increased budget mostly went to the expensive bullshit throughout the game. Instead of hiring a proper audio technician, they blew their money on renting a freaking tank and various expensive cars. If you need material items to make your game interesting, then it shows how shallow the content really is. Ironically, that also pretty accurately describes Richard LaRuina. The UI still looks horrible, it has awful color palettes and sometimes the buttons don't work properly. The subtitles in the game are also completely broken. They randomly stop during some scenes and start again later with the same subtitles from the previous scene. Richard also told me to use the subtitles because parts of the game aren't in English. Why the fuck do I have to turn subtitles on for that? Shouldn't that be provided if I'm playing a game in English anyways? I guess not though, that would be logical. All I'm saying is maybe the goal of this project should be to make an entertaining video game instead of appeasing somebody's flawed vision of themselves as a sought-after seduction guru. I'm sure Richard is going to see this, he monitors every single mention of himself on the internet. Richard, I just want you to know that you don't have to take every criticism about your content personally. Yeah, it sucks when people don't like something you worked hard on. I get that. People leave hurtful comments on my channel all the time. Hell, I've been called out on things I can't fix before, like my slight speech impediment, but I keep trucking on. Because being comfortable in your own skin is a sign of self-esteem. You will never please everyone, and that's okay. But when you feel hurt or insulted because somebody didn't like the thing that you sent them to review so much that you try to damage their channel for your own ego, that's taking things too far. When you get back at others by taking cheap shots at them through your follow-up game and using their content without permission, maybe you're in the wrong. What I mean is, can you stop being such a Richard dick? Well, that's it. There's a list for 2018. I look forward to see what 2019 has. Oh my god, it's Super Seducer 3!
Do you think I'm crazy? I've done all this.
mangina!
I just want you to